You're listening to Agency Alchemy, a podcast from Advertising Week. Join us as we sit down with top agency executives to uncover the secrets behind their success and explore how they're navigating the ever-evolving advertising landscape. From discussions around innovative strategies and emerging trends to effective leadership conversations, each episode offers invaluable insights into what it takes to thrive in today's evolving marketing world. If you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're looking for more content like this, check out our roster of podcasts available now on the Advertising Week Podcast Network at www.advertisingweek.com/podcasts. Thanks for listening. Experiential has been described as advertising without a net because when a brand asks someone to physically interact with an idea, there's nowhere for bad creative to hide. Our guest today is James Robinson, Global Chief Creative Officer at Momentum Worldwide, and we talk about creating experiences that actually solve business problems, why sponsorships need to move beyond visibility, and how AI is changing creativity without replacing the human thinking behind it. We also get into creative leadership and why sometimes the best thing an agency can do is tell a client something they really don't want to hear. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You've written some articles for us in the past. It feels like it's a long time coming. In a way, I kind of feel like I know you. One of my favorite things that I've read is sort of a case study in the past few years was a thing that you had written, actually co-written, I think, about the campaign around spiced Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a favorite of mine, as was spiced Coke. So I had a particularly personal, keen interest in it.
That was a favorite campaign of ours too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I mean, to get us underway, tell us about Momentum, what you do there, what Momentum's all about for the uninitiated.
Yeah, so I mean, Momentum is at its heart, it's an experiential agency, but we like to think of it as experiential gets sort of put into a pocket. And what we like to say is that Momentum is a creative agency whose output is experiential. So it's a little different from what people traditionally think of as, you know, we're gonna have the campaign over here, and then we're going to talk to the experiential agency and they're going to create an addendum to the campaign. We do that, but we also create the idea, the strategy, everything else that goes at the center of campaigns and create those as experiential expressions. We also like to think of experiential can be any moment that a brand is interacting with the consumer. So it doesn't just have to be a physical experience that we've built in the world. We've created experiences that have lived inside Fortnite. We've created experiences that are insurance programs for basketball jerseys, that are AI-driven interactions that let people create their own versions of what a spiced cola might taste like. So there's a huge variety of what we do. The palette is endless.
Well, you've built a reputation for sort of solving business challenges with those experiences rather than what we think of as traditional advertising. How do you approach the creative process when the objective isn't just awareness, but driving, those ever exciting, measurable business outcomes we all like to talk about?
Well, I mean, look, the interesting thing about experientials is sort of it's advertising without a net, right? It occurs in the real world. You can actually see that interaction that happens between a human and a brand, and that sort of tells you in that real moment whether you're being effective. But really, like, I think at the heart of it, we have a cheeky sort of strategy that a tool that we use to analyze every single idea that we're creating. We call it CTA, which in the traditional advertising world is call to action. In our world, it's culture, transaction, and amplification. And it's how we analyze every idea that we create. So C stands for culture, right? And that means, like, the idea has to be rooted deeply in what's happening in the place that you're at. So if you're at the US Open, if you're at Coachella, if you're like in a sports thing, if you're on the street, like we have to be reacting to the environment that we're in and the culture that surrounds us. Transaction, that's the sort of driver there, right? Whether we mean a literal transaction, you're purchasing something, or that there's a give and take between the brand and the consumer, that has to be at the heart of an experiential idea. And then amplification is A stands for amplification, and that is like, how does the idea live beyond just the experience that you've created? How does it get outside the walls? How are people participating in it, even if they're not able to actually be there? So if you've got those three elements, you've got culture, transaction, and amplification, it sort of forces you into you're solving a business problem, right? And experiential was set up. If you think about how experiential started like often with sampling, right? Like, or the most basic of business driving things. I want you to buy this product, therefore I'm going to give you a taste of this product. That's still like like at the heart of what we do. Like, but we add to it. We build bigger things around it. We create better things. We want to give you an experience with the brand, so you keep coming back to it. But it's really important that we are locked into that transactional idea.
It's interesting that you use culture. I tend to think of all those things as context, but I really like this idea of it feels more respectful in a way to use culture, especially if you're talking something that's different as, like you mentioned Coachella, but then you mentioned Fortnite earlier. And if there's a place that I'm very intrigued about experiential, it's definitely Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite, but I find the idea of all these things happening within it fascinating. If you don't mind, explain the cultural difference between those two, just those examples.
Sure. I mean, between say, well, like between culture and context, the difference is like context could be it's just that we are at the US Open, therefore we're going to do something about tennis, right? Logical, but ultimately boring, like, or not as impactful as it could be, because every other brand in the world is going to do something about tennis. But if you can find something true about that audience in that moment and then activate against it, then you've got something, you've captured lightning in a bottle, right? So that's the difference for us between culture and context. You have to have the context, but you have to understand how people are moving within that context. I mean, one of my absolute favorite ideas was around basketball. It had no experience at all built into it. It was we noticed that basketball fans hated when they bought LeBron James's latest jersey, and then LeBron James would get traded and they'd be stuck with a worthless jersey. So partnering with American Express, we created this program where you insured the jersey. If you bought it with American Express and he got traded, or whoever it was got traded, we would replace the jersey with either a player of your choice or the team that they went to, right? So right there, it's like we knew we could have just created a Papa Hoop experience, right? And we would have spoken to basketball fans, but what we analyzed and noticed was like, this is really a need that basketball fans have. That's the culture, right? That's not just context. That's understanding how basketball fans really are feeling and thinking. And then within Coachella and Fortnite, it's like Coachella, we try to do that too, like understanding that the audience that you're in, like what are the things that you are answering for them beyond just creating a photo op, which every brand is doing, or beyond just creating a cool environment, beyond just like what every brand is doing. You do the same and you apply that same thinking to Fortnite. Like Fortnite is this wonderful, malleable experience where I don't just have to create an experience that fits into a world. I can create an entire world that is the experience. So, I mean, the best use of it was in the middle of the pandemic when nobody could go to the Super Bowl. We built a Super Bowl inside of Fortnite that everyone could go to, right? And we had millions and millions billions of people coming in from across the world to our activation. It's the most attended activation that I think any experiential agency has ever done. And that creates like that. But again, it was understanding that like it was there was a context. The pandemic was the context. The culture, we knew people were looking for ways to attend the Super Bowl, and we knew that they wanted all the experiences you could have had in the Super Bowl. They wanted not just to watch it, but the experience of getting an autograph or meeting a player or being able to interact with other fans. All of that was happening in the context of Fortnite.
Could you buy very expensive nachos?
You couldn't buy nachos. We should have like we had plans to have you integrate in with like DoorDash and stuff, but it didn't come through at the time.
Excellent. Your position has to have a lot of responsibility. I mean, you're basically head of content creation across a global organization. How do you maintain a consistent creative philosophy then while still allowing your teams freedom to innovate?
I mean, I think like everything that we do is based and built and demands innovation, right? The never been done before experience is something that I think the consumer is demanding. So in some ways, we're lucky. We're driven by the our both our clients and our audience are demand something that hasn't been seen before constantly, as opposed to the say the television format or the video format where it's like if it's worked once, you can then repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and people enjoy it. The experience, like if I am taking you out of your day or taking you away from a concert that you're in or super like a football match that you're going to or or just taking you away from your daily commute as you walk through a station, then what you're experiencing has to be new, has to be rewarding. So in terms of like how you inspire teams to do that, it's like it's honestly like we try to draw in people who have very very diverse backgrounds, right? Like we've hired people from traditional agencies, but we've also hired Disney Imagineers and architects and like people who come from a technology background. And you like the idea is to put them together in these different pairings and create this soup, this alchemy, if you will, where these ideas bounce off of each other and create something new. The important thing I think for to be like as a creative leader in that is to be open to it. Like I had to stop ideating. Like I think that's the important thing that I think a lot of creative leaders learn to do later in their careers is stop trying to force your point of view onto the idea. Try to step back, try to maintain that that objectivity rather than being subjective, and let it play out and sort of guide it into the best version of itself. And I think once we started to do that, like we put frameworks around it. CTA is a great framework. That's how you judge whether an idea is working, like how we have teams present them, create them, concept them. Like, so we have requirements they have to fill. But in terms of how they check those boxes, that's up to them. And then it's my job to be light touch, to guide it, to make sure that it is on brief, that it answers the business need and is not just a creative joy pop, that it is a real strategic point of view. But like, honestly, my job is more manager than player manager. My job is I create the team and the structure that is built to create ideas in different ways. And then I move those pieces around to make sure that you have the right kind of thinking or the right combination. And by recombining things, you end up with new stuff all the time.
Amazing. Let's talk about sponsorships for a moment, if you don't mind. They remain one of the biggest investments many brands will make, yet a lot of them struggle to unlock their potential and their value. What separates a sponsorship that simply gets visibility from one that becomes a powerful platform for brand growth and engagement?
I think it's intent. I think the knee-jerk reaction is I just need to get my logo out there and get it visible, right? And you can see it all like right all over the World Cup right now. There are names on sightings. There are there are like blimps and other things that it's all about visibility, and that all right, that there's value in that. But I think the real ones are the ones that use sponsorship for intent. My favorite is like I think is Rexona right now in the UK is sponsoring the underarms of all the people who are holding up the substitution boards in the World Cup. Right? That's using using sponsorship in a clever way that draws attention to your product, right, in a very clear way. And I think that's what that's when I think sponsorship really works. I think like honestly building a strategic rationale for why you are sponsoring what you are sponsoring and who you are sponsoring, and then using creativity and using intent to make sure that that is driving more than just visibility, but you're actually driving a story that tells a point about your product.
Let's talk about Make It Matter. What does that mean to you?
So Make It Matter is a program that we started I think it's 5 years ago now, maybe even longer. And it was it came out of the fact that we became aware that experiential, while incredibly powerful, is also generates a ton of waste. If you think about all the samples we give out, all the structures that we build. And so Make It Matter became like we sat down and we began as a leadership team to look at this and try and talk about like, okay, how do we address this issue? How do we bring in more responsible practices, more recycling? And at one point we just started looking at it, and I started just saying that like, the problem's too big. How do we break the problem down into much smaller decisions? And that sort of became the heart of Make It Matter. So Make It Matter was make every decision matter. And so from the most junior creative to the most junior business leader to the most junior producer, all the way up to me, all the way up to my senior partners, like every decision that we make has to be made with sustainability in the back of your mind. So as you're concepting the idea, how do you make this idea a little bit more sustainable? As you're designing the idea, what materials are you using? What materials are you reusing? As you're working with the client, like how many stops are we going to schedule on this tour? How much fuel is that going to use? Right. So so if everyone in the company is empowered to solve just the problem that's in front of them through a sustainability lens, then eventually, if you add all those decisions up, if all those decisions are made correctly, you've made a much bigger impact than if we just tried to create a top-down, you'll do this way, you'll do this way approach. It was so successful as a sustainability program. It got us, we're the only agency, I think, in the world that has 2 ISO certifications for sustainable experiential practices. And that means we're audited every year by ISO to make sure that we are adhering to the goals that we set. But then we began to apply that to how does that work in terms of inclusivity, right? Like, again, like from how you're dealing with each other to how you're hiring to like, are you doing that with a lens of making everything equitable and fair? How do you do that through the lens of wellness? Like, how are we building an experience agency that is a good experience to work in? How do you do that so we are treating people with fairness and letting people we're not burning people out, but every decision, it's like breaking all these big problems down into tiny decisions and making all of those decisions matter. And that makes a change that matters.
And have you seen that then unlock new opportunities that you feel may not have been present before or may not have been available?
Yeah, we have. So especially on the sustainability side, we have vendors come in like from around the world who show us new kinds of technologies, like plastic grown from kelp, or like flooring that powers itself, or things like insetting. So instead of like offsetting by by planting a tree, you're actually investing in sustainable technologies like sustainable jet fuel and things like that that will help the alleviate pollution problems down the road. So I think, and some of those conversations with those vendors have actually become ideas themselves. So like being able to create experiences that power themselves, for example, those are activations in themselves.
We're living through a period of enormous disruption, driven by AI, changing consumer behaviors, fragmented media, evolving client expectations. That's just the short list. How do you push the boundaries of innovation while ensuring that the work remains deeply human and emotionally resonant?
Yeah. So I think we use AI in a few ways. The first is we are able to get to the idea, like get to the sell-in of the idea faster using AI. So and a little bit more accurately. So but we have to be very careful with it. So just in terms of like selling the dream, like AI imagery and things like that help us sell. Like, so I just want to be very clear. We never use AI to create anything that goes in front of the consumer, right? So whether we're doing a picture on a shelf or even a structure, right? That's not AI created. What we do use AI for is how do I create a deck that will sell the idea? Some of the imagery that we create there, it's easier for us to create that, which is great because in an experiential agency, your lead time to create the idea versus the lead time you need to produce the idea is sort of the inverse of what you get in a regular agency. We have a very short period of time to concept it because we need a very long time to produce it. So it allows us to get to things faster. We've created tools like things like what we call the Xtimator, which is powered by like Omni AI, which is as you're concepting the idea, it's analyzing the idea and making sure that it stays within budget, because the biggest thing that can happen within experiential is budget creep. So it sort of keeps us like it allows us to more accurately assess whether what we're presenting is within your budget. And then it also gives us a tool that lets us create experiences that can customize themselves around you. So you can use AI as part of our experience to create artwork, or like as you walk in, it will change colors or change scenarios to match what your profile is. So we can create experiences that shape themselves around the consumer. What we are very careful with is that what we're showing the client when we say it's going to look like this, that is an entirely human created experience, like, or human created piece of like schematic or artwork or render, right? We're not using AI to do that, because what we're finding is a lot of agencies are showing an AI render and then they're unable to produce it. So we are very careful to make sure that we are human creating those. We might use AI to create a little bit of animation or magic over the top to make them look a little fancier, but we are really like we know that what we've put in front of you is built. So there's a delicate balance that we have to ensure that we're making sure that we are selling reality to both our clients and creating it for our consumers.
It's interesting, talking about using AI to sort of go through budgets and things like that. Have you taught it to then also take on the responsibility of measuring all these other factors, the sustainability factors that you mentioned earlier? Is it taking that into account as well?
It's starting to. It's like obviously these things take a long time to train. So once we've just sort of like taken this estimator tool online, the next step will be taking a sustainometer tool online.
For agency leaders, brand marketers, et cetera, that are listening, what are some practical ways that they could use creativity as a force for positive change? Whether that's driving business results, building stronger cultures, creating meaningful societal impact, what have you.
I mean, I think that human creativity is going to become more and more valuable as the tools to create things become more and more ubiquitous, right? So the more ubiquity the more we're able to build movies on our laptops or create like whole campaigns like within days. How you're doing that, what you're doing with the power of that tool, that's going to be the differentiator. Like that's like the more unusual, the more that solution created, like the more that you apply creativity to really solve problems as opposed to just throw messaging at people, the more powerful your messaging is going to be. I think we are dealing with a world that, like you said, is dealing with disruption, is dealing with tremendous problems, and like we are creating a wall of noise that is harder and harder to break through. Creativity is the only tool that you have to break through. Like we are pattern recognition animals. Our brains are wired to tune out similarity. So you have to figure out how to create something that breaks through that noise or stands that shatters that pattern. Otherwise you're going to get lost in the wash. And as much as we don't want to hear it in the industry, I don't think that just targeting is enough. Just making sure that your message hits the right eyeball isn't enough. It has to be the right message that's doing something unusual that sticks in that target's brain.
Yeah, it's amazing how many messages I'm receiving that it makes sense that I was targeted for it, but I have no interest in the message.
Right, exactly. And and again, it becomes much more compounded when like if I'm just, interrupting your video feed or your doom scroll, or if I am just popping up as a window on the side of your news article that you're reading, well, that's one thing. But if I'm literally physically taking you and walking you through something, or making you put something in your hand, or like try something out, like what I'm doing had better be worth your time. So like that's where creativity for us comes in, because I do think that the more of this, the more the world gets more artificial, the more the messaging gets more targeted and more artificial and more efficient, the more real life experiences are going to become more important to brands. So there are going to be more of them. And the same problem is going to apply. How do I stand out from the next person who's created an experience in the middle of Grand Central Station? How do you create it in a way that people remember, interact with it, and tell the story of it afterwards?
Last question, looking back across your career, what's one piece of work or one creative decision, either one, that fundamentally changed the way you think about the role of creativity in business?
I was on the pitch for Audi at Venables Bell, and like we had no right to be in that pitch. We were a small independent agency. We were going up against much bigger network shops. And I remember Paul Venables and the strategist at the time, Lucy Ferry Jones, saying, we need to tell Audi that nobody cares about their cars. And that was one of these like, what? That was like it was just such a brave thing to say. And it was true, because at the time you had Mercedes, you had BMW, and you had Lexus. Those were dominating the American marketplace. And they needed to get them to understand that in order to break through, they had to be outrageous. So their whole pitch, their whole video, the thing that won the video, which I got lucky enough to help them work on, was your cars are perfect, nobody cares. They're brilliantly engineered, America isn't listening, right? They're like all these things. It was all about how America doesn't care, America doesn't care, America doesn't care. And it was like, to break through, you have to punch them on the nose, right? You have to attack, right? You have to be outrageous. And that for a luxury brand and everything was a kind of a revelation. And that won the pitch for them. And I think it was like the penny dropped of like, oh, you have to tell the client the uncomfortable truth for them to buy something truly great. And for them to do, and honestly, for them to do something, they needed to hear that, because that's what their brand needed to do. And I think that's the most important thing that any advertising agency can do, like whether you're in experiential or anything else, is tell the client what they need to hear, because that's the only way you're going to be meaningfully effective. Otherwise, you're going to do something they're comfortable doing that probably isn't going to work.
Absolutely love that. Well, James, this has been an amazing conversation. Thanks so much for taking part. If one wanted to find out more about yourself or Momentum or both, where should they go?
www.momentum.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much.